apparently he was like had some part of a business deal where he was like selling light bulbs. So he's half trying to sell me light bulbs and half trying to like talk about why these light bulbs are so great. And I'm just listening. I'm just marking out because it's Roddy Piper talking to me about light bulbs for 20 minutes. And I'm thinking, all right, I'll roll with this, and this is cool. And I wish I could record this and put this on the air. I mean, this would be gold. And we get to the end of the phone call, and like, so when can we lock this down? And he's like, I'll call you tomorrow. And hangs up and never heard from him again. But I got to listen to Roddy Piper try and hack a light bulb to me for about 20 minutes, and that was worth that the 10 years of radio that I put in for sure.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode.
I hate you
welcome to
so
another
much.
episode of Not About Wrestling. I'm Chris Illuminati.
I'm Stephanie Bowen, and I hate Chris Illuminati.
You love it. How you doing?
I'm good. Really good.
For the viewers that are watching us and not listening to us, do you want to talk about your new sign behind you?
Oh yeah, hold on. Which way am I going? It says "Anxious Millennial Cowboy." Yeehaw! I made it for Revolution on Sunday. I put it next to my food.
I wanted to bring it up, and here's why I wanted to bring it up. Because everybody who listens to us probably also follows us on social media.
Yeah.
And everyone who follows us on social media, I want them to know that anytime there's any mention of Hangman Adam Page, it is not me.
It is definitely Chris. He is such a Hangman Adam Page mark.
Here's how you know it's Steph doing social. It's about Hangman. It's about fashionable male Kenny Omega. It's about either of those two things. If it's me being snarky and old man crotchety about some wrestling thing that I'm mad at. Oh, I thought of something that I got mad about. I got mad about a wrestling thing, and I was like, I should tell Steph this. And,
Wait,
and
what?
now I can't remember.
But that's accurate, though. Like, it will less on Instagram, more on Twitter, where we both tweet. And I just had this conversation with my friend. Shout out to Matt Whitesall. He's probably going to be listening to this. That he's like, oh, yeah, you must do all the tweeting. And I said, no. I said, if it's in all capital letters or about Hangman Page, it's more than likely me.
I was going to say, I don't do capital letters.
No, I'm always all caps because I'm like screaming and excited about something when I tweet.
Yeah.
And then I said, if it's anything else, mostly old man complaining, it's Chris.
No, I said something. I did something.
Did you say something nice about someone? No.
I did that excited GIF after the end of Dynamite.
That was shocking. You did.
And have they even named MJF's little stable yet? I don't even know if they.
No, they have not.
Yeah. So I was like all excited about that, and I did that. You know what? Here's my question. That little puppet meme guy that looks like a monkey. Like, what's his name? Like, who is that? We all know who that little puppet is. You know, the cute little puppet that puts his hand over his mouth, or he's got the excited face, the shock.
Oh, you're talking about the GIF. You also sent the like MJF puppet master thing, so that's where my brain was going.
No, I'm talking about the actual little like Brazilian puppet that's on a kids' TV show.
I don't know, but
here she goes, looking it up.
I am.
We need.
This was like the first conversation we ever had was about like using GIFs, and do you actually know where they're from?
You know, we need Steph's looking it up music.
I will add something. I don't do it often. So I don't even know I don't know what words to use. We're just talking over each other right now.
I thought you were looking it up. I'm trying to vamp. It's called vamping.
I'm talking.
It up this is where the Steph's looking stuff up music is going to go. It's going to be like do 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 do.
Yeah, but I was saying I don't even know what to type to look this up. Puppet
confused GIF? Brazilian puppet.
Oh, puppet GIF works.
Puppet GIF.
Yeah, it all comes up.
It's like a bad '90s band that would open for Candlebox. So a puppet GIF and Candlebox. The Trocadero.
Monkey puppet. I don't know. It just comes up under monkey.
Hope it leads to porn. I hope looking up monkey puppet leads to porn. I feel like everything eventually leads to
I'm just glad I'm on my personal computer. The actual oh, geez. The actual puppet was a character in a Japanese children's TV show.
Japanese.
In English called Growing Children, which ran from the years 1959 to 1988.
Wow.
There you go.
You could have asked me 1,000 times to guess, and I never would have gotten more.
I wonder if people just listening, I will definitely flash this up in the video, but I wonder if people listening actually know which one we're talking about, the little like side-eye monkey puppet.
Yeah.
Everyone uses it.
We'll try to explain it as you've probably seen it in the meme where the little monkey puppet is looking straight ahead and then it's like looking right at the camera. I remember it became huge like right when COVID hit, and the meme was when you find out that what you do every day is actually called quarantining or like social distancing or something like that. When you found out what you do every weekend is actually called social distancing.
Yeah.
Like the Muppet, like
the little side eye.
Yeah. Like what? Yeah. So that you've seen that meme, then you know what we're talking about. But yeah, for the video, we'll flash. That just makes the podcast. People have to go watch the video.
Yeah. Listen, then you can watch the shorter version.
But we're on 10 different mediums, and we talked to a guy today who's been on 10 different mediums doing wrestling. He's a friend of mine, Eric Gargiulo. Eric and I met at a website. We bonded. We both worked at a website. We bonded over wrestling. He's been a ring announcer for ECW, CZW. He hosted a radio show for 10 years, which still boggles my mind that there was a wrestling radio show.
Yeah.
It's not a thing I ever thought. I mean, I knew then because I know, but like, as a kid, I never remember flipping the dial and hearing anybody talk about wrestling.
Yeah, on the AM radio.
Yeah, on AM radio. Right between the Jesus reports.
Right, yeah, right there.
Jesus is still dead. And also, Bruno Sammartino lost last night at the Forum. But Jesus is still dead. Now, here's Jimmy with the weather. That's my best AM radio impersonation. And now the crowd.
But is everyone on AM radio like Southern?
Yeah, even in Philadelphia, where Eric hosted the show.
Yeah.
And now, right after this, we're going to Ezekiel's prayer hour. But first, let's listen. Let's talk about some wrestling. Here's Eric with the wrestling.
Oh.
Eric, what happened last night?
Oh my goodness.
I want to almost find out if there are any AM radio stations. Just, when was the last time you listened to AM radio?
I don't.
Never.
I barely listen to FM radio.
When was the last time you listened to radio?
I listen to regular radio every morning because I listen to 98 Rock. But
I was waiting for you to plug that.
I unintentionally. I already talked about Matt, who works for them earlier.
Just checking.
Unintentionally. You cornered me into that one.
This is what I will do. I do this, and I will freely admit it. So sometimes if I'm on like a long car ride and I'm sick of whatever's on my iPod and I like don't want to listen to any more of the podcast or stuff, I will put on radio, usually not FM because it's mostly music. I'll put on AM talk and I will hit scan. So it hits every station for like 5 or 6 seconds. And I will listen to what insane thing they were saying. And if I'm interested, I'll stop the scan and listen to the crazy, because AM, like every different AM station talks about crazy stuff. So I'll like listen to what the person's talking about. And then if that's boring, I will hit scan again and it'll scan to like the next one. And I'll try to find the most random. Sometimes I find the most random things.
Sometimes?
Most of the time.
I was going to say, I feel like most of the time AM is like so hard to even like get
in
on the radio at all.
But sometimes I'll catch Ezekiel's Farm Report. Hey, it's me, Ezekiel. Here's what's going on with the crops. But first, here's Eric with wrestling.
I'm using that as the opener.
Here's Eric with some wrestling.
Okay.
Last night, Greg the Hammer Valentine beat Coco Beware in a street fight with ears of corn. Brought to you by Ezekiel's. You need ears of corn, you get down to Ezekiel's. Now back to more wrestling.
I feel like that's exactly how you should now intro into Eric's interview.
I feel like that should be our sponsor.
If you can connect, if you got the connect, hook it up.
Here's us actually doing a legitimate interview with Eric.
Yeah.
And we're back, and we are here with an old friend of mine, and I don't mean old as in age. I mean, we've known each other a while. Mr. Eric Gargiulo, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. Really excited to be here on your show, and really excited to talk to you. Gosh, it's been a long time since we've seen each other and talked. So yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen each other in a long time. So Eric and I, Steph, I don't know if I explained how we know each other. We both started at a job at the same day.
Oh.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, on the same day. And what we were doing was we were bloggers for a little website called phillyburbs.com. And Philly Burbs was like the online home of 3 local newspapers around here. But we didn't start off like blogging at first. Do you remember the morning build, Eric?
Oh man, Chris, do I remember? I think we'd have to get up at like, I don't know. My wife and I talk about it sometimes because she was with me when I was working there. I'd have to get up at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and unlock servers and sit and wait and watch stuff come in. And then you're kind of a slave to just watching that feed come in. So yes, I do remember it.
Yeah. So Steph, real quick, what it was. So the 3 newspapers, they would file the stories for the night that would go in the actual newspapers. So this is 2006, right, dude? 2006?
Yeah, 7. Yeah, I guess like 6, 7. Yeah, it was somewhere around there. I think 7.
We're going to make it sound like we were using hammer and chisels the way this worked. But it was because it was so ridiculous. So they would file the stories that went into the newspaper. These things would then filter through this system that was antiquated before it was even started. And we would have to go through and like manually make sure that all of the stories from the newspaper made it onto the website, but it never made it the right way. So you'd have to go through and like change paragraphs or like fix formatting. And it would literally, you spent the first 3 hours of your day formatting articles that somebody else wrote. And most of the time, like sometimes the articles wouldn't come through. So everything you got wrong, these old crotchety newspaper people would call up and yell at you at 9 o'clock in the morning because their article about the local dog show that 3 people were going to read didn't make it correctly on the website. I mean, Eric, I
was just going to say, he's not exaggerating at all. There's nothing that he's saying that is untrue. If anything, he's being kind. He's being kind to the process.
That sounds painful. So just like one sentence swap or you named the dog's name is wrong. Somehow.
If you changed anything, God forbid. Oh.
Yeah. Whether it was right or wrong, it didn't matter. You just weren't allowed to touch it.
Right. Like if you knew it was wrong, like if you saw a misspelling, you didn't touch it. You just let it go.
Yeah. Or a bad stat or somebody they got a bad stat wrong in there or something. You can't touch it.
Yeah. So Eric would get up. Eric was one of the morning guys. Like we would rotate, but Eric, you did it pretty routinely where you were up at like 3 a.m.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, I like to get up early, get my day. I mean, it was great. I mean, the perks, Chris, and you remember this is like you're done your work day at 12 o'clock. You're going to the gym at 12:30. Nobody's there. You get home at 1:30, 2 o'clock, and you got the rest of your day ahead of you.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
You had to get up at 3 a.m. and read about dog shows.
That is true.
So you guys bonded so you started same day and then bonded over dealing with that bullshit for the start of your day.
Yes, we bonded over that and wrestling.
Yep.
Because we're both huge wrestling fans. And one of my favorite stories is, and I'm going to let Eric tell the actual story. So he wrote an article. So what happened was we were one of the first websites that would get sent to the Yahoo homepage. Mm-hmm. Now, when you signed up for these deals, the websites had to be able to take a certain amount of traffic. I don't know if somebody at our company fudged our ability to how much traffic we could handle. So Eric wrote a wrestling story that made it like to the top main part of the Yahoo page. And so this is 2006 when people like went to Yahoo and like all hell broke loose. So I'm going to let Eric describe the rest.
Oh man. Wow. Try to remember. I think it was on like a WrestleMania story. It might've been like a list or something about, I just remember it was WrestleMania. The theme was WrestleMania. and everything shut down. Like everything froze, everything went down. It was just funny because, I mean, that's your goal, right? That's your objective as a blogger, a writer. And I know, Chris and I mean, we would, that's what drove us is we, like to get those page views. I mean, Chris and I, and really Chris was at the forefront of blogging and networking and SEO. And I mean, and Chris was very kind and generous with his knowledge. But, Chris was talking about the crotchety sports writers. And I joke with I joke with people when I talk about my time there, is that Chris and I are sitting in this room, sharing a big table, whatever it was. I mean, clearly not the glamorous life you'd expect working in media, but you have these guys that are beat writers for the sports teams sending in their stories, egos, the size of whatever. And, Chris and I are blowing these guys out of the water with our page views and traffic to the website. And these guys are walking around. I mean, Chris, I'm not going to go out on a limb here and say that I'm sure they were making a lot more than we were at the time.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just, I learned really quickly, and it's funny because today that's how I make my living is in marketing. But I learned really quickly just the value, and really through Chris, of just SEO and web marketing and just that whole network, which, at that time to have that in our arsenal was really invaluable. I mean, I kind of to Chris's point earlier, you have to remember it's not like it is today where you have 10 million blogs out there and everybody and their grandmother and grandchildren are blogging. I mean, it was kind of in its infancy, and there wasn't a whole lot out there, but it was just, I mean, Chris really found a lot of brilliant ways to kind of cut through that noise. And I hate the word viral. I always everybody wants to go viral, but just to bring those page views and traffic. I mean, yeah, it was a different time, right?
Yeah. So Eric's article basically shut down the website.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't going to handle.
It was WrestleMania. Yeah.
So we just kind of sat there all day, like we were excited because the article did so well. But then, everybody in the company was pissed because, Eric kind of broke the website. Yeah,
exactly. So but that's a great point. Is here we are in this room. Half the people don't even know our names there. It was separated, right? You had our little tiny room, which was probably a cafeteria before they built it into a quote unquote digital area. And you had this big building where, all the writers and everybody else in the company worked. And they were mad that we broke the website. And it's like, we broke the website because we're getting traffic to the website. That's what we're paid to do.
And this is a good problem to have. This should not be an issue.
They were probably doubly mad because it was a wrestling article.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Yes. Well, I remember back then too, a lot of those guys, those, old school crotchety guys, they would complain to management and say, the wrestling articles, I mean, anything. I mean, and Chris was writing, some really edgy stuff back then too, that all of our stuff, that we were, tarnishing the reputation and just low class. And it's like, dude, we're bringing the traffic, we're keeping the lights on around here. So it's interesting. And, here we are 10 years later, and we can see kind of how those industries have transitioned or not appropriately.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
The good old days.
Now, I did see you hosted a wrestling show for 10 years, starting in 98.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Before, it's, I was telling somebody about it the other day. I was doing podcasting before they called it podcasting. I wish, again, here's those ideas, you kind of wish you kind of blew that out back then. But yeah, so I want to say 1998, I started hosting a weekly pro wrestling radio show at a little AM station in Levittown, Pennsylvania, 1490 WBCB, owned by Merrill Reese, the voice of the Eagles. And yeah, so they gave me my hour on there, and I was quickly able to build that up. And again, it's a different time. I mean, now, my gosh, I mean, you're in the thick of things here with all the media that you do, but I don't really pay too close attention to what's going on there. All I know is that there's podcasts on my Twitter feed, every 3 seconds, there's somebody promoting a podcast or a webcast or something. And that wasn't the case back then. I mean, you could count on your hand back then how many people were doing radio shows and things like that. And I remember in Philly, so that's where I'm at, right outside of Philly. there used to be a radio show that I listened to called The Squared Circle when I was, I don't know, maybe like 8, 9 years old. And they were great, and I loved it. And I just always liked radio anyway. I mean, Chris and I used to talk about Howard Stern for hours and radio when we worked over Philly Burbs. But I always liked radio, so I was really ecstatic about it. And the other thing at the time, I thought anyway, with a lot of the other wrestling shows out there, is I thought they kind of insulted your intelligence. They were kind of too, I hate the word marky, but they were kind of too marky, for a lack of a better word, where you didn't have those shows that just kind of talk to you as, okay, we're all in on the deal. We all know what it is. We're not trying to insult anybody one way or the other. We're certainly not trying to compromise the integrity of the industry, but, let's have a conversation. Let's not pretend something is what it isn't. And let's, have a conversation about it. And that's what I tried to do. And yeah, I stuck with it for 10 years. But I go back to the podcasting thing. I want to say probably about 2006. So we went on the. So when I was at BCB went online. They weren't even online at first when I went there. So I want to say they went online a couple of years after I was there. And what I started noticing is that all the calls on my show were from all over the world. Actually, we got calls from England sometimes. I mean, there were very few calls from Levittown, Pennsylvania. It was like Michigan or Boston or Ireland or England. It's like every week, and I would do live remotes and stuff, and nobody would really ever come because the audience was internet. They were listening online, and I would take my shows and post them up and everything, and it started dawning on me. I'm like, so why am I? I'm going to the station every Saturday to be there live from 11 to 12 or whatever it was. I have to schedule my interviews. I mean, what you guys are doing here, think about it. If you had, 1 hour, 1 week, where, in the middle of an afternoon where most of the wrestlers are traveling, at 12 o'clock on a Saturday, try and find a wrestler that's free to do an interview and not in a car somewhere. So, and so I would have to schedule these interviews, and a lot of times I would miss out on some good opportunities, or I'd record them at home. I said to myself, I'm like, why am I doing this, in the studio in this hour? I could be doing this at home. I could go live from 7 to 8. I can go live from 9 to 10. I could open up a chat room. I could just kind of call the shots and do it myself because, it's not like, again, I have this large audience from Levittown. It's everywhere. And I already built that up. So I did that. I took my show online and learned really quick on how to do that, how to create an iTunes feed and how to, encode your audio and et cetera, et cetera. And quickly I was able to get that ball rolling.
Let's talk about some of the guests that you had there. I mean, I was looking through the list. I mean, you had Jericho, you had Bruno Sammartino on numerous times.
A lot. And as a matter of fact, I actually got to become very friendly with Bruno Sammartino, something I would never have expected. It was just very organic that way. He was just so kind and so nice. And I would call him to book him for the show. We would just talk, and he's just, it's like, what do you have in common? It's like Bruno Sammartino about. I guess you'd be surprised because I'd be on the phone with him for a while, and we wound up communicating outside of the show. It wasn't just a call, hey, can you come on the show? It was just, hey, how you doing? What's going on? But yeah, it was awesome. It's sometimes you got to pinch yourself, right? And I'm sure you guys do it here because you talk to these guys that you grew up watching, that you're a fan of. And sometimes I didn't always get them on the air. Like I remember trying to get Roddy Piper. This is an interesting story. So I got Roddy Piper's phone number. I'm laughing because it's a funny story. So I got Roddy Piper's phone number, and mind you, I love Roddy Piper. He's probably like my top 3. So, I'm marking out just to call him. So call him up and say, hey, the first thing they always ask you, I don't know if they do that anymore, is how'd you get my phone number? So, and luckily I had some connection, so I would always be able to get these guys' phone numbers, and you would just say, promoter gave it to me. And generally that was enough. Like they would never, it would be like, oh, okay. They wouldn't ask you who, they wouldn't ask you like when, how. They'd be like, oh, okay. So I said, hey, Mr. Piper, I do the show, blah, blah, blah. Could you come on? We could I do it live from this time, or we could always record it previously. And he starts going into a whole spiel about light bulbs. So apparently he was like, had some part of a business deal where he was like selling light bulbs. So he's half trying to sell me light bulbs and half trying to like talk about why these light bulbs are so great. And I'm just listening. I'm just marking out because it's Roddy Piper talking to me about light bulbs for 20 minutes. And I'm thinking, all right, I'll roll with this, and this is cool. And I wish I could record this and put this on the air. I mean, this would be gold. And we get to the end of the phone call, and when can we lock this down? And he's like, I'll call you tomorrow. And hangs up, and never heard from him again. But I got to listen to Roddy Piper try and hack a light bulb to me for about 20 minutes, and that was worth that the 10 years of radio that I put in for sure.
And if only you had been able to record that, you would have helped him sell some light bulbs.
Well, I have a funny story. I have another good story about trying to book guests. So this one was actually successful, but this is a funny story. You guys will appreciate this. So Paul Orndorff is another guy I was a huge fan of growing up, and I remember at the time, somehow or another, I don't know if it was YouTube or tapes or whatever, I started going down this Paul Orndorff rabbit hole at this time where I started watching his matches. I was just like, man, this guy is awesome. And so I'm like, I got to try and get this guy on my show. So somehow or another, through a promoter, I get his phone number, give him a call, and, first question, how'd you get my phone number? Through a promoter. So then he says, well, who? And I mean, he's not, the guy couldn't be any less friendly, if he tried. So he's like, who? I just make up, like Tim from New England, something like that. And he's like, well, what do you want? So I go on this spiel. I talk so fast, and I said, I just got to tell you, I do this radio show out of Philadelphia, and I'd love to get you on. And he's like, well, I'm not really doing radio shows anymore. And I said, well, I just got to tell you, I've been watching your matches for the last 2 weeks, and just how great you were. And, you did all these subtle things. You were, the way you slowly took your robe off when you wrestled Chief Jay at the Spectrum, and then you clocked it from behind. I started calling out all these spots, and there's this silence, and he's like, okay, I'll do it. It's like, after I put him over for 20 minutes, at first he's like, I'm not doing anything. He's like, okay, I'll do it. I mean, just like that. And he came on, and it was awesome. We talked for about an hour, and he couldn't have been nicer. Super cool. But yeah, that was a fun one.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, so interviewing people back in 98 versus now is extremely different. Kayfabe was still alive back then. So did any of the guests ever admit to something that they probably shouldn't have?
I would say probably not. I'm trying to think if that ever happened. No, but I will say this, so I had Dusty Rhodes on one time. Again, huge Dusty Rhodes fan. I mean, we're old school guys. So all these guys, I mean, it should be no surprise. I'm big fans of these guys. Still am. And I had Dusty Rhodes on. I was so excited because he was such a hard get. And it took me 8 years to get him. I was trying for 8 years to get him. I finally get him. He put his book out, and he comes on the show. And the one thing I always try to do, I wasn't trying to ask hard questions to put anybody on the spot, but at the same time, it goes back to, you don't want to insult your audience. So your audience kind of gets used to a way that you interview. And I was doing shoot interviews for videos on the side too. So I'd gotten accustomed to a style where I asked hard questions, but never insulted anybody or never got anybody angry. And with him, I said something to him about Thunderbolt Patterson. So I don't know if you or your listeners are familiar, but there's kind of this deal where a lot of people think that he stole Thunderbolt Patterson's gimmick, because Thunderbolt Patterson, who is African-American, would do all the jive talking and all the same motions as Dusty. And I mean, if you ever went back on a YouTube video of Thunderbolt Patterson, you'd say wow, I feel like I'm watching Dusty Rhodes. But it is what it is. And he touched on it in his book, but he kind of glossed over. He's like, yeah, people say that, but I didn't. So then I say, hey, in your book, you said something about Thunderbolt Patterson. I don't even know what I asked. I mean, it wasn't anything insulting or coming at him aggressive in any way. And then he all of a sudden says, wait, what? I can't, I'm losing the connection here. Wait, there's a lot of people around here. We're cutting out. He's like, how about we do this again sometime? And he's like, I gotta go. Like, okay, all right, fine. And at the time, I didn't really think anything of it, because I've never really had anybody do that. And at that point, I've been doing the show for 8 years and talked to just about everybody, and everybody was cool with everything. And then I'd heard from somebody that was there, might have been Larry Zbyszko, because Larry Zbyszko was also doing the same they were from a convention. He was calling them from a convention. And Larry Zbyszko at the same convention. And it might have been Larry Zbyszko that told me that like nobody was even near Dusty Rhodes. Like he was like working that whole thing. Like nobody was near him. He was standing in the corner talking on the phone, and and it was all a big work. So he probably didn't like the question. Sorry. I mean, I still a huge fan and love the guy to pieces. But yeah, I'd say that was the closest anybody came to ever saying something or getting angry. But I got to say, everybody was always very cool. And I mean, I'm sure as you guys are, I always try to go into those interviews, very respectful, put them over, and, there'd be some hard questions in there, but nothing's going to get anybody in trouble. And generally you kind of knew how they would react, because sometimes I talk to these guys on the phone and you just talk to them more. Sometimes I would have done those video interviews. So it's like, I already asked the question, but I didn't ask it here. So like, it's a new medium. So yeah, everybody was always, I thought everybody was always pretty cool, actually.
Did you ever have somebody do an interview and they're still kind of working the gimmick? They're not giving you anything?
The honky tonk man.
Really? See, now there's a guy who can't shut his mouth on shoot interviews, but he came in and he would still, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, Honky Tonk Man was probably the only one. And, to his, to give him a little credit. So how I did the interview with him is we were both, there was like an independent wrestling card somewhere in Levittown, one of the high schools in Levittown. And so I was sent there like to do remote work for the radio station. It was like, hey, checking in live from the card. And so then I went over to talk to the Honky Tonk Man. So I say to his credit, because it's not like any of the other interviews that I did where I called them up previously, or we had that phone relationship. Like he didn't know me from anybody. He didn't know my show from anybody. He's over there still selling his gimmicks and stuff. So, to give him a little bit of credit there, he didn't know anything about what was going on. All of a sudden it was just this guy with a microphone in his face that had a lot more hair back then. But, but yeah, I would say he was probably the only one. All the other guys were always very cool. I'm trying to think if there's anybody that tried to work like the gimmick, like even like just setting up the interview. I don't think he was trying to work the gimmick, but I thought it was kind of funny that Bobby Heenan, I had Bobby Heenan on a couple of times, who was awesome. He would, I don't know if you remember, he would always have this Miss Betty fictional character when he was on Primetime Wrestling. So when I would book him, I knew I was emailing his email address, but he would always send the emails back signed from Miss Betty as like his like secretary, like 20 years later that she's still his secretary. I just thought it was kind of more funny than anything, but he was a good one. We did so Bobby had cancer and got sick and everything. So I had him on twice. And first time he was healthy, so it wasn't even an issue. Second time he was just starting to get sick. And I called him. He put out his second book, and by that point we kind of knew each other a little bit. And he was super cool. And he's like, "Listen," he's like, I really don't know how much I can talk these days. He's like, "Why don't we go for like 15 minutes?" And we'll because the previous time he was on, we did an hour, did a full hour. I said, "Hey, you want to do the hour again?" He's like, "I can only do like 15 minutes. I'm not feeling too good." Fine, no problem. We'll do 5 minutes, whatever you can do. And we get on there, and he starts rolling with his Heenanisms. I mean, he's just so funny. I mean, he's just great. And he's like shooting on everybody because he didn't really care at that point. Like he knew he wasn't going to work in the business again. So he just didn't care like who he insulted or like who he threw under the bus. He just let it fly. And we went to 5-10 minutes or whatever it was, 15 minutes. And I start wrapping up with him. He's like, "Hey," he's like, "Wait a minute." He's like, "I'm just getting started." He's like, "Let's take some calls." And I'm like, "All right," and then so we start taking calls. And then during the break, I say, "Hey, you doing okay? I can wrap it up, whatever you want." He's like, "No, let's keep going. Let's go." And he did a whole hour again, which was awesome because I knew he wasn't feeling well, but he loved performing, talking to people, talking to fans. And from what I understand, that was, he was going to conventions and everything, even when he was really sick. And for that reason, which I get now, but like, that was a cool one because I was such a huge Heenan fan growing up, and we had such a good time the first time that he was on. And when he said he could only do 15 minutes, it was like, oh man, I totally get it. But man, you were so funny the first time. And then we got going, and it was cool. It was a lot of fun.
Steph, would you like to explain to Eric what our last episode was?
Why this is so great. Our last episode, we did a special episode where Chris made me watch all 4 episodes of the Bobby Heenan show.
Oh, that's great.
On the network, because and people that listen know that I'm a new school wrestling fan. So I've only started watching the past decade. So Chris is slowly like teaching me things from before. So he's like, we'll slow you in here with just some like comedy.
I don't show any wrestling. I'm like, let's go watch these really awkward interview shows.
Chris, I was watching on YouTube the other night. My wife passed out and I'm like wide awake. I was watching like a compilation of Heenan and Monsoon on prime time, not the matches, just the compilation. Yeah. See, that's what I mean about Chris. Like he knows his stuff there, you know? I mean, that's great stuff. He had like the porn star Rachel Hunter, if I remember right, on there. Yeah.
It does not age well. I will say none of it ages well.
Watching the first episode through, I was like, oh, yikes. Like,
texted me, she's like, what am I watching? And what makes it so funny was it was on a wrestling show. Yeah.
It's like you think back on it, it's like, how did this happen? Yeah, like who greenlighted this? Yeah,
that was my text.
Our episode. We did some research. Listen to our episode, and
okay, I will.
We'll tell you how it happened.
Okay, Chris did some deep research.
I did some listening. I did some research, and that'll explain how it happened.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I mean, it doesn't really get much better than that. Then, and the old TNT episodes. I mean, I can watch those for hours.
Oh, I'm gonna get her to do those next.
Oh gosh, absolutely.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out like a method to there's a lot, so we got to figure out where to start.
And they're long. So
yeah.
But
you got to get the early ones when Captain Lou was still a heel, and he's another one. He would just go on there drunk, drunk on vodka, and he'd just be going crazy. I mean, he was the best.
So I told Steph there's a wedding episode where everyone is bombed. Like you can tell everyone is bombed.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Steph, we'll do that one next.
Okay, sounds good. I need a list of all of these.
So,
for sure.
Before you did the radio show, though, I mean, you did announcing everything. You were with ECW for a while. How did that whole thing happen?
I was. It was very organic. So at the time, I was working with my buddy, and we would go on the road on the ECW road show. So it's like you have to kind of put yourself in the capsule of 1994, 1995 ECW, right? So you talk about this today, and it's just impossible just with the way things are today. But 1994, 1995 ECW, we would just go, we'd get a table, sell our videos, hawk our merchandise. And as part of our business, we had a hotline, right? And everybody had a hotline back then. I don't know if you remember the hotlines. I'm not talking about the 976 ones, but the ones where everybody, you pay like for an 800 number, $7 a month that you put your news or whatever on there. So we had a hotline, and I would do our hotline. And I should say too, so I'm missing a key part of the story. I'm jumping ahead. So when we would set up our tables at shows and stuff, we would go in the locker room, and we got to know all the guys, and we knew Paulie. We knew Paulie a little bit from WCW because we had met him at Civic Center a couple of times. But he was always just really cool, and he was just always very approachable, always really cool. So what Paul used to do, and again, it sounds crazy when you think about it now, is so ECW used to air, I don't know if you remember this, Chris, ECW used to air at like 5:00 in the afternoon on Wednesdays on the sports channel when it first came on the air. You don't remember that?
No. Okay. For me, it was always on at like 2 a.m.
Okay. So when it like first aired, like,
yeah.
So it was Wednesdays at 5:00, right? It's such an odd time, like an odd channel. So it'd be like on the equivalent of like Comcast Sportsnet, right? Mm. And so it would air at 5:00, and we would do like an ECW recap on our hotline, just something to talk about. And he would call the hotline every week, not just ours, everybody's, because he wanted to hear what people thought of his ECW TV show. So here's this guy. I mean, he's iconic at this point. I would say I would argue he was iconic back then too. And, if Joe Blow down the street had a phone number, or if he had any kind of media where he was putting out an opinion on ECW, Paul wanted to hear it, whether, the guy was agreeing or not. I mean, amazing when you think about it, right? And you think about how big ECW would become. So Paul would call the hotline, and the one day, so it was customary after all the shows, after we would sell our stuff, you always go and shake everybody's hand goodbye, especially Paul, because he's letting you set up there. I mean, you're paying him, but it's still make it a deal. So we'd always do that. So I remember going to shake his hand the one night and say, hey, thanks. And he like held onto my hand and he's like, hone in on your announcing skills, like the Jedi, or something. And I'm like, okay, and so we leave, and I'm like saying to my buddies, I'm like, what do you think he meant? Like, nobody knows. And so he would call our offices too sometimes. So there was a little bit of a relationship there, not much so with me and him, but with my buddy and him. And he said to he said, make sure Eric's in whatever town it was, some like East Bumble, Frig, New York town or something.
No,
it was, I'm trying to think of what it was. It was somewhere like in Rochester. I don't know that it was Rochester, but somewhere like around Rochester. And so I go out to Rochester, walk in, we set up our stuff. And he's like, and he grabs me, he's got a big smile on his face. He puts his arm around me and he's like, you're announcing tonight. Like, I don't even know what I'm announcing, And he's like, you're announcing. I said, well, what? And he's like, you do the ring announcing tonight. He's like, because at the time too, he had Bob Ortiz, he's also iconic with ECW. He was a ring announcer, but as ECW started to branch out, he couldn't always make all like the outside of Philly events. I think he had Flyer season tickets and he didn't want to miss like Flyers games or something. So I do think that's the truth. So they didn't have a ring announcer on a lot of these shows. Sometimes Paul would do the ring announcing, but he'd do it behind a curtain and kind of change his voice and nobody knew who it was. So he said, go around, get the weights in the towns with the guys and and he's like, and have fun, whatever. And so I get it. So what was nice is, again, I kind of had a relationship with all these guys. So it's not like I'm just this new guy walking around the locker room like, where are you from? And how much you weigh? It's like all these guys knew me to some extent. And I was always respectful and, always had a good relationship with most of these guys. And so I did it. So I go out there and do it and sucked. And I went out there. Oh, and here's the best part is, so I wasn't dressed for this. So like we'd go on the road and, you wear like a t-shirt and shorts or whatever. So I wasn't dressed for it. So I said to him when he said, you're going to announce, I said, I'm like, I don't have anything that's where he's like, go get one of Joel Gertner's sweatsuits or something. So I got this like windbreaker suit from Joel Gertner that was 3 times like my size. I'm swimming in, right? So, draw your own conclusions. So here's this guy, in this big sweatsuit. I look like I'm out of Sopranos, right? As I'm walking in Rochester, New York out there, do the announcements. And, and so I don't know if I did good, I did bad or whatever. Like I was just kind of glad it was over because, you're nervous as anything. And so I say goodbye to him and thank you. And that was kind of the customary thing to do. And he would say, come to wherever we were the next night, come to Albany. We were in Albany, but come to Albany tomorrow night, but bring a suit tomorrow night. Yeah.
Well, Eric, we want to thank you for coming on. Before we let you go, tell everybody where they can find you online.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun, really a lot of fun. Great to see you. Great to meet you. I really don't promote wrestling too much anymore. I mean, you can catch me on Twitter. I mean, I retweet a lot of classic stuff at Camel Clutch Blog. I don't really blog or write about it. I feel like it's a little unfair because I don't really watch it. So for me to run out there with a hot take, it's, I'll leave that to the 5,000 other bloggers.
And the WWE book is on Amazon, right?
Yes. So the WWE trivia book is on Amazon. You can get it there. You just look up WWE trivia book and my name and you'll find it. And it's a lot of fun. I really tried to write a book, a trivia game that was very well-rounded. So you don't have to be a hardcore fan like the 3 of us are to get it. But at the same time, if you are a hardcore fan, there's going to be stuff that will challenge you in there. So I tried to give it a really nice mix, so it can be fun for everyone. And that's the reaction that I've heard from people that have gotten it. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, guys.